Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for our 2024 IT Trends Roundtable discussion. I'm Kaylee Alessandro. I'm the Director of Marketing for Omega Systems. I think at this point, most of you who are joining us are familiar, but in case there are any new faces joining us today for the webinar, I'll share just a quick background on Omega. We are an award-winning MSP and MSSP with more than 20 years of experience, notably in the areas of managed IT support, cybersecurity risk management, regulatory compliance, and cloud services. And I've got a full house of speakers with me today, which I'm excited about. So please join me in welcoming three of my colleagues from Omega Systems, Bob Moore, Steve Hathaway, and Maureen Robin. We've got kind of a diverse background in terms of their expertise and their roles at Omega. So I'm going to kind of round robin amongst you guys and have you introduce yourselves to the audience, give a little summary of your role and your expertise. So I'll go according to the order that I can see you in. And Maureen, I'll start with you.
Sure. Great to be here. I'm Maureen Robin. I'm a security and compliance consultant at Omega. I've been in technology for a zillion of years, I won't mention how many, and now I'm specializing in security and compliance.
Wonderful. All right, Steve, how about yourself?
Yes, Steve Hathaway. I'm currently working as a technical solutions architect with Omega. I've been in the MSP space for well over 10 years now. Wore many different hats, from service desk, project engineer to solutions architect, director of technology, done some things on the service desk management. So it's given me the unique opportunity to see the business from basically every angle, so that hopefully now we're able to provide some of the best solutions to our customers.
Awesome. And Bob?
Great. Yeah, I'm Bob Moore. I'm a technical account manager with Omega Systems. Similar to Steve, probably around 10 or 11 years directly in the MSP space, and had a well-rounded background as well. I've always been tech adjacent, and I've had the opportunity to see both the engineering side and the business side. So I've kind of worked in all realms, and I really help our clients as a consultant just leveraging technology better to do better work for their people. So that's my focus.
Awesome. Yeah, great diversity in terms of all of your expertise. So excited to touch on a number of different topics with you guys today and dissect some of the trends that we're expecting for this year. So there's definitely a lot we want to cover as far as the agenda is concerned today. But before we dive in, I try to do a quick logistical breakdown for folks who may not have joined us prior and have some of these outstanding questions. So we did allocate 60 minutes for today's discussion. We'll do our best to leave as much time as possible for Q&A. That said, you are welcome to submit questions at any time during the webinar by using the questions box on the GoToWebinar dashboard. And like I said, we'll try to address as many of those as we are able with the time we have left at the end. We are absolutely recording today's webinar, so if you need to drop off early or you want to revisit this content later, share it with colleagues, you'll absolutely be able to do that. And you'll receive a copy of that recording as well as the presentation slides and some other relevant materials, typically 24 hours after the event. So you can expect that in your inboxes tomorrow afternoon around this time. So with that, want to dive into our trends discussion and kick things off with a 2024 IT trend that we continue to field questions about on our side, and that is Microsoft Copilot, everyone's favorite topic of conversation this year, I think. So businesses are anxious to see what it can do for them, and as of last month now, it's finally available to a broader audience, which is really exciting. So Bob, I want to start with you, and I'm curious, what are your initial impressions of what Copilot has to offer right now in terms of benefits and opportunities?
Yeah, it's been fascinating. I think you hit the nail on the head. Everybody's been really chomping at the bit for this. I get calls daily. When can we get it? When can we get it? We finally got it a month ago in the small enterprise, and been using it. And it doesn't disappoint. It's really just increasing productivity in the everyday tools we use, using an Outlook, in Teams, Word, anything in the Microsoft suite. In Outlook, I think we've all been in a situation where you get an email that you're tagged in 20 conversations later. Hey, we better touch Kaylee on this one. You can quickly ask Copilot to summarize what's going on in that meeting, in that message, some action items from it, and even help you draft an email in response for your part into why you were brought in the first place. So all those little incremental time savings every day are huge. In Microsoft Teams, there's been pieces of Copilot we've been using for about 6 months, where if you record a meeting and you do a transcript, you can get a recap of that summary right out the gate with action items as well. With the enhancements with Copilot, you now have the ability to have real-time feedback. So in the middle of a meeting, you can have a conversation with Copilot on your own side and say, hey, listen, where are we at so far? What are the action items so far? Do you have any ideas on questions I need to ask? And it's really a game changer, because it's taking all the information that's going on and it's helping you keep up to date on it. Now we're not in meetings anymore trying to take notes on our keyboard, typing away. Hold on a second, let me get that. We're able to have the conversation and have that interaction like we did back in the day when we'd be in front of everybody all the time. So I always love that piece of the whole Teams environment as well. And then even Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, you can go into a Word document and say, hey, I want to draft a business plan for an IT shop in New York City, anything random, and it'll start to build this out for you. You know, things that we would do just by going to a search and finding colleagues and trying to compile this data, you can have a conversation with the AI within Copilot and allow it to do it. You can do that in Word. In Excel, you can ask it to quickly say, hey, what's the sales data from this table for the last quarter? And instead of having to create pivot tables and make sure you have all the information right, Copilot will instinctively do that for you. PowerPoint as well, easy to apply branding from your company, or just converting a business plan into a presentation. You can continually edit it, and it's just phenomenal the way the tools are working already.
I think I'm going to have to, I'm a chronic note taker, so I'm going to have to get used to giving some of that control up to Copilot in the future. And like you said, you know, give yourself some time back for sure.
Absolutely.
You know, certainly the security and data privacy considerations for any AI type driven tool, Copilot included, are something we routinely remind and educate our customers about. So Steve, you know, given that Copilot it's clearly still evolving, we're still learning a lot about its capabilities, what's your recommendation at this stage with regard to how best companies can secure their data and their environments in advance of rolling out a tool like Copilot or something similar?
Yeah, no, it's a great question, because like Bob said, right, immediately you're fielding a lot of calls for it, and there's definitely a market for it. So we would like to caution, you know, it's kind of like a look before you leap approach. Office 365 allows you to have your data in multiple different services, Teams, OneDrive, SharePoint, in your email. So identifying where your data is a great place to start. Where do we have things stored? And then what types of data? It can be everything from PDFs and just innocent Excel files, but then there might be some sensitive data, and you may have some bank routing numbers, some social security numbers, something that's a little bit more sensitive that we need to make sure it has the proper governance around. And so as you start to identify, put governing policies in place, but then also integrations. Microsoft's made it great and so easy to just integrate all these third-party applications that you're working with on a day-to-day basis. But what that's also doing is it's bringing visibility from those systems into Office 365 and then back. So when you're introducing Copilot into your environment, you have potential for someone to be able to see things in other environments that you don't have the same governance around. So it's important to take a look at your environment as a whole in its totality and say, okay, where is our data? Do we have the governance around it? And then as our integrations go, are they also staying to that same framework?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. Sort of that web that it's creating, like say, you know, integrated with all of these other applications and tool sets, being mindful that kind of once you flip that switch, you're really opening yourself up to, you know, a much broader network than probably you're even aware of.
Exactly.
Lots still to learn there on the security and compliance front, I'm sure. But
the term you'll probably hear, you know, a little bit more frequently is AI TRISM. It stands for Trust, Risk, and Security Management. It's been coined by Gartner. And really, this is a framework that I think they're encouraging a lot of organizations to adopt, not just as it relates to Copilot, but as to AI in general. It runs through a bunch of different phases, and it'd be a good thing for someone, you know, anyone really who's curious about AI to look up AI TRISMs, TRISM, and it really dives into some good security practices and it starts, you guys are right at auditing your systems, not just yours, but your partners, your SaaS providers, and all these other organizations that you're using. Do they have AI models that they're using today, and how are they using them? Right, start there and then work your way back.
Yeah, I think, I think we're going to touch on this a little bit later too, but that what you just said reminds me too that the vendor aspect of it as well. So, getting that due diligence from your vendors and how they're using these types of AI-driven tools is going to be really key as well. Bob, outside of Copilot, what ways or tools are you seeing about from an automation and AI perspective, as far as some of the other daily challenges or ways that kind of it's alleviating some of those inefficiencies and time sucks that we typically see?
No, it's a great question. I think, everybody's kind of familiar with chatbots and virtual assistants, and they've evolved, especially with these AI-powered tools. No longer do we like to call and be on hold and try to figure out the prompts ahead of time and get spun around when we need help with something. So being able to go and have a conversation that 90%, 95% of the things that I need help with can be answered just by the interaction I'm having with the AI tools and the chatbot are huge assets. Security is number one in our world, and there's a lot more machine learning things that are helping identify security and fraud, especially. There's industries around this. The banking industry has anti-money laundering is an entire industry. If anybody's ever worked or knows the finance world, and it's all driven by what is unique, what's going on that's different, that's not an everyday occurrence, or why is this happening at 2 a.m, or why is this money coming from this country? Those kind of things are huge, and they're really helping clamp down on those kind of things. And the other one I talk about is probably near and dear to your heart, is just personalizing marketing, right? So we know so much about ourselves, and we're learning more and more about ourselves. Instead of having that blanket marketing approach and trying to get people to understand what you do, you're able to kind of personalize a little more because you know a little bit about them, or you're learning about them real time as they answer some questions, and you're able to kind of tailor those marketing responses as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of potential in terms of how different AI-driven tools can help us on the daily. So I'm sure this list will be ever expanding as we continue through 2024. So let's transition to security. Touched on it briefly, Bob, but certainly from a trend perspective is driving a lot of our conversations with customers and prospects these days. So Maureen, we talk about the security landscape all the time. It's daily for you, right? How the evolution and sophistication of threats continues to change. You're in the weeds, as part of our in-house SOC day after day. And you're a certified CISSP. I'll give you some props there. What are you most concerned about when it comes to security threats today?
Well, that's a good question. It's not one thing. What's concerning is that it's a combination. It's a combination of volume, sophistication, change, the speed at which it changes. The volume is coming from, well, partly from AI, like we spoke about, but also there is a lot of kits available for would-be hacker to buy at low price, and it's lowering the barrier of entry. So therefore, we're going to see a higher volume of those type of attack, phishing attack. On top of that, they'll be more convincing because we have the voice and the video impersonation, the artificial intelligence, all that. It's going to be increased. It's not only the phishing attacks, we see also the targeted DDoS attack where disgruntled employees or activists, or that's an easy way to disrupt companies unless you're protected. So that's for the volume. In terms of sophistication, well, basically our playground, what we need to protect now, it's not only the backyard, it's not where we had the on-premise infrastructure, because many businesses now are relying on either hybrid or multi-cloud. So we need to defend that. So the perimeters, the defense perimeters have shifted. It's not sufficient now to do just around something. It has to incorporate the whole cloud infrastructures as well. So not only do we have to defend that, but we need to monitor it. Monitoring it because we don't know who's coming in. It could be the Trojan horse. Basically it's like somebody may have, that user may not be the user who say they are. Of course, you know, the creds could be compromised. So we have to figure out a way to make sure that we are not just letting anyone come in. So we're switching our protection from the parameters to the zero trust security module. And I think we'll talk about this a little bit more in depth later. So for example, I just give you an example that we know of a scan account, you know, an account that is used for scanners, basically. It didn't have MFA because they rarely do. And it was compromised, you know, brute force attack. They found the password compromised, and they used their lateral movement to compromise another account. It's a backup account that unfortunately had also admin access, and there it goes. They are in the network and exfiltrating whatever they want. So we need to protect more than just what we have, what we don't see. We have to include the remote workers. We have to include the third-party vendors, all the IoTs, Internet of Things, everything like that. And the change, the speed at which it changes, it's amazing. So we have to be ready. But I want to make a point also. It's not just a technology issue. We need to have a C-suite also analyze their supply chain. We see a lot of supply chain attacks, so we need to vet those vendors. We need now to have a transition from a reactive, where we tell, oh, we've been attacked, to more of a proactive security posture. So my most concern is, like, are the companies, are the businesses prepared? Do they have the tools, the skills needed to dwarf those attacks?
Yeah, you hit on a lot of great things there. I think one thing that stands out as a consumer, as a user, this day and age, is like, it's getting harder to tell what's real and what's fake, right? It's, you know, you see all these deep fakes now, and the video impersonation and the email, like you said, you know, phishing campaigns are getting more sophisticated. It's getting hard to tell the difference.
Definitely.
So obviously, to keep up with the growing sophistication of threats, we're also seeing a corresponding evolution of security tools and technologies to compete against those threats and ward them off. So, Maureen, what do you think, you know, maybe that ideal security stack looks like in 2024? Obviously, knowing every company's different in terms of their size and their vertical and their resources, but kind of what do you see as that comprehensive security stack this year?
So at a minimum, you know, the cyber attacks are 24/7. They come from anywhere. So the question is, how do you spot an attack, you know, in the middle of a weekend as it's emerging? How do you analyze something abnormal is happening? So you basically need tools, intelligent tools. So the minimum I would recommend is the EDR, which stands for Endpoint Detection and Response. Basically, it's sort of like an antivirus on steroid, right? It can analyze the abnormal user behavior. It can disconnect the device, the endpoint, from the rest of the network. Sometimes it's not even sufficient. We need more another tool to supplement this EDR. It's called an AMDT, which stands for Automated Moving Target Defense, and that would stop also the more advanced type of threat. So you also need, so this is at the endpoint level, you also need to know what's going on in your network, what's coming in, what's coming out, what's happening in your network, not only in your network, but on your SaaS application. How do you collect all that event? So you would need a tool like a SIEM, which stands for Security, Information, and Event Management. Basically what it does, it collects all the events from your firewall, from your 360 files, 65 or Salesforce. It will correlate them and try to make sense to kind of define the picture of what's happening. But all those events, that's a lot to digest, right? So if you throw all that to your security analyst, they're probably going to burn out. So one of the tools that you may need is a SOAR, which is a security orchestration and automation and response. It orchestrates, meaning that it's going to weed out all the false positive. It's going to eliminate the noise, and only the true kind of emerging attack is going to be sent to the SOC team, which is a Security Operations Center team. It's a human, right? And they will investigate that the validity and the priority of a threat. So far we have EDR, SIEM, SOAR, And then if you really want to be more proactive than not just looking at the event in the past, you need more of a reactive type of system. You would look into a managed MDR and managed detection and response. So this is where the proactive threat hunting is happening. The risk investigation is happening in real time. That's a team of professionals. They use the EDR, they use the SIEM, the SOAR, and they proactively look at the attack. They're triaging, they're responding, but all that in real time. But I must say, I don't want to forget that, you know, those acronyms are great, but we also need to protect our first line of defense is our staff, right? We need to protect that because each time an employee clicks on a link, it opens little holes in your security. You know, it bypasses some of your system that you have. So I think if you don't have it yet, the cybersecurity awareness training is key. You need to protect your staff. You need to arm them with some kind of tools. Especially the targeted people, the CFO, the CEOs, they need to recognize all the social engineering tricks, including AI. We need to also involve more of a, if you have a CISO in place, you need to involve them in a decision, in a business decision in that, because they can increase they can see where the flags are and needs a additional security control in it. So, and sometimes, one more thing, sometimes the compliance will tell you what you need in terms of tool. For example, the FINRA, they say, all right, you need SIEM, you need the IAM, which is the Identity Access Management, you need DLPs, the Data Loss Prevention. So look also at the compliance you fall under, and it will tell you what kind of stack of tools you need. That's a lot of acronym, but basically you have to look at security in terms of layers. You start with your staff training, and then you add EDR, SIEM, SOAR, and so on.
All the acronyms. That's the answer. All the acronyms. Yeah. Steve, you're in the trenches helping customers scope out what they need within their tech stack. What do you foresee as maybe any specific trends on the security front this year?
Yeah, well, Maren has it right there. Vulnerability management in the middle is a huge one because she talked about speed and volume. The speed at which new vulnerabilities are being published, it's only increasing. And then what makes that even worse is the speed at which they're being exploited. There's published things out there that say now the average is within 30 days of a vulnerability being published as it's being exploited. And when you pair that with the fact that we're introducing new software and new technologies to our businesses at a rapid pace, the days of having an annual penetration test or an annual vulnerability scan, they're kind of gone. You're at a year, you're leaving so much on the table and so much lack of visibility into anything that's present, anything that was published last month or within the last 60 days or 90 days. So whether it's upping them to quarterly or in best case scenarios, having some form of persistent scan, something that gives you visibility in as close to real time as possible. As threats are introduced into your environment, you're seeing them close to real time and you're able to act on them. You're able to understand the business risk, patch them if necessary, or if possible, or possibly remove them from your environment if that's the better approach.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. Maureen, you mentioned, your regulatory frameworks are giving you kind of specifics now on here's what you need. And Steve, to your point, that for years it said, all right, a periodic vulnerability assessment or an annual vulnerability assessment. So I would expect we're going to see some more stringent changes to those timelines moving forward because, like you said, it's just the speed at which things are changing. It's just not sustainable. We are going to get into compliance deeper a little bit later, but one trend we're seeing, particularly among regulated companies, is moving towards that next generation of access control with the adoption of zero trust security models. Bob, can you talk a little bit about zero trust and why we're seeing more and more customers look in this direction?
Yeah, absolutely. It has a lot to do with the evolving landscape of some other things we'll talk about, like hybrid cloud and a lot of the remote workforce. But it's really it's a philosophy, and it's a security philosophy that just challenges that traditional thought of anything that's behind the firewall is safe. Those days are gone. So many things can get behind the firewall. There's just so many ways to get around it. So it's just an assumption that this is no one is inside or outside the network is trusted. It sounds horrible. It sounds big brother, but it's just it's a mindset in that if I were to want to access resources, it's going to check things outside of just who I am, where my location is the device I'm on current OS, and is it secure? All those types of things, is there a trusted device? So that's part of the whole philosophy. And, that verification goes into different anomalies and things like that. We look at least privilege access is a big term used in the zero trust philosophy world, meaning that I'm only given the ability to access things that I need to do my job, or even just in time. If I am a technician saying I'm on the help desk and I'm trying to help a client and I need an elevated privilege, I can request that. I'm confirmed who I am, where I'm from, that I'm the right person that can have it, and I'm given temporary access to do that. So that's just in time access. And just segmenting your entire infrastructure and environment where all your data and technology is, so that if something does happen, we can never say 100% that it's never going to happen. You're kind of minimizing the blast radius, if you will. So if things are in their compartmentalized areas, that's part of that whole philosophy and structure as well.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
So let's switch gears a little. We talked about it briefly, but hybrid infrastructure, cloud, clearly a continued trending topic. Multi-cloud implementations and cloud and hybrid implementations are on the rise as we see companies leverage various combinations of on-premise, public, and private cloud resources to support their operations. Steve, let me start with you here. Have you noticed any trends with the types of companies that are transitioning to hybrid or multi-cloud solutions? I think historically we've seen, certain verticals or industries may be more reluctant to adopt public cloud resources as an example. Do you see changes to that dynamic, or is there still a level of resistance maybe from certain types of businesses or industries?
Yeah, I mean, it's a really good question. There's still some resistance there. I mean, you're going to have your verticals, whether it's financial, healthcare, government agencies, that are just going to prefer not just the security, but also the granular control that private cloud can provide outside of public cloud, and just being able to possibly choose networking and possibly choose underlying infrastructure, whereas cloud's not going to give you that opportunity. But what we are seeing, right, is that a lot of customers, and it used to be everything was on premise. All of your line of business applications were on premise, whether it was QuickBooks, Sage, you name it. Now, all of those providers have also taken the tact of, well, we're going to offer this as a hosted option, and whether that's through a web-based or a hosted terminal server or RDS environment or virtual desktop environment, they're giving their customers the ability to take it off from on-premise and use it and move it into the cloud. And as we've seen our customers do that, it's also had a two-pronged approach, where now they don't have the same reliance on the other servers, right? Active Directory maybe isn't as important anymore, especially with the advancements that have been made within Entra AD and Google Workspace. So we've worked with a lot of customers to eliminate servers in certain cases, move a small amount of them to public cloud, and then start to heavily leverage things for SSO and leveraging, as we mentioned, Azure AD or Entra AD and Google Workspace to kind of fill those gaps where Active Directory used to be the only option. You now have multiple options that are available to you.
Yeah, certainly more options than 10, 15, 20 years ago. Bob, what are you seeing among your customer base with regard to hybrid adoption, and are there specific challenges or questions that businesses are thinking through as part of that adoption process?
Yeah, it's really widespread adoption is happening. I think I've heard 82% of leaders have already embraced that model is the latest stats I had recently. And the hybrid can be a blend of public cloud services like the Azure environment from Microsoft, or Amazon Web Services, or Google, and that private cloud side through companies like Omega. We're just not relying on the premise anymore, and a lot of those concerns go away. There's certainly benefits. There's cost and financial benefits just to go on that route, especially with the flexibility. I mean, when we're trying to help our clients buy a server for 5 years of use. We're hoping we can get that number right, and we don't overcompensate or not have enough available and have to reinvest 3 years in. It's kind of that crystal ball mentality that kind of goes away. You have a lot more flexibility with that with the cloud environments. It's really great. Of course, the biggest thing, you're still going to run into security concerns. Now you've opened it up to things outside of that, behind or your local, the area, you know, and that's where you really have to be keeping an eye on what kind of access controls. So I have all the things that Maureen and Steve have already kind of touched on, and that whole footprint that she had laid out of making sure you have the layers. You definitely want to make sure that you're tightening up the security in that world. And then from there, it's just having that balance and data governance, and knowing that your vendors, and everyone that you're touching in and out of that world is secure.
Maureen, let's stay on security for a second as we talk about cloud adoption. With data privacy and data residency concerns are important for certain companies. If we can assume that there's at least some appetite out there for cloud, regardless of your size or industry, what are some of the primary security questions that businesses should be asking themselves and asking of their cloud providers to ensure that they're adopting a technology solution that meets their specific requirements?
So if they are in special verticals, I mean, the first thing is to look first at the compliance requirements. Are you under GDPR? Are you under HIPAA? Because some providers, the cloud providers, will have different options for those clouds, especially for HIPAA. Some question you should really ask is, do you encrypt the data at rest and in transit? What kind of a level of encryption do you have? Where are the encryption keys managed? How often do you back up? And where is my data stored in all those backups? Are in different countries, because different countries don't have the same physical security or security measure in place at all. How do you isolate my data from the other clients that you have? Let's say I don't want to be your customer anymore. How do I erase all my data that's on your cloud? Other question could be, what is the current uptime you have? What is the accessibility of my data? Whatever certification do you have for protecting my data? Are you ISO 27000 compliant, or NIST, or SOC 2? What are your disaster recovery process? So all that is, and ask for evidence, proof of certification, evidence of security control. You need to, the business needs to do their due diligence when it's selecting a cloud provider, and don't trust everybody or anybody.
There you go. You use that zero trust model with your vendor selection too.
Exactly.
We touched briefly on compliance earlier, but as each year passes, it seems like more and more verticals are finding themselves subject to stricter compliance obligations. Maureen, from your perspective, what are maybe some of the biggest hurdles to compliance right now?
So I just want to make clear that compliance doesn't equate secure, right? So for example, if you follow a set of rules, you're compliant. You're driving down the highway and you're complying with the traffic rules, so you're compliant. But you're not necessarily secure from another car with road rage, and unless you have a bulletproof window, you're not necessarily secure. So there is a difference between compliance and security. However, the compliance, it will require a minimum set of security controls. So let's start with that. In terms of compliance, it's going to be hard to hide from it. Regardless of business size, the regulation is coming down to our doorstep. You can see it with the data privacy law. California already has their CCPA. New York PA is just passed in the Senate. So you know that it's coming. So we also touch about not being so reactive, but more proactive, and having more continuous kind of vulnerability a check, right? So the biggest hurdle we see, and when I conduct assessment, I'm asking, where is your sensitive data? And I think the biggest hurdle is to find out where it is, because now, as you mentioned earlier, we are on-prem, it's on the end user device, it's on the mobile device, the cloud, the SaaS application. It's cloud storage, Dropbox. We don't know exactly where the sensitive information is. So that's a hurdle number one. Find out where it is, and we have scanners for that. Who has access to it? How do you control that access? Because now it's not AD user controlled, right? How do you control that access? How do you review the accounts? Where are your gaps? You know, do you know what best practices? Do you know what benchmarks we're looking at? Where are your gaps? Also, you need to conduct more risk-based analysis or due diligence and monitor it. The policies are big. You need to have policies. You need to review them and update them quite often, especially with all the changes that are happening in terms of compliance. And I see a lot of those cyber questionnaires that require evidence, screenshots. So you have to have this in place. You have to have a security control in place so we can take screenshots of it or evidence of it. So there is an increase in the demand for risk assessment, certification audit. So just be prepared. The fines are expensive, or you may be unable to insure. Cyber insurance is getting very expensive if you don't have a security control in place.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, the financial cost of you know, putting the systems in place, right? But then also the potential cost of a breach, of, you know, your premiums increasing. Definitely, you know, considerations that you need to weigh as you go through this process.
Exactly.
All right, so I want to kind of round out the conversation, and we'll give folks an opportunity to ask questions. But maybe we can, you know, go around the horn, so to speak, and talk about some key takeaways, give people, you know, a healthy piece of advice to take with them. So given the state of where we are today, you know, some of the trends that we talked about today and the millions of others that are out there, what's maybe one piece of advice you'd each give to business and IT leaders thinking about 2024 priorities and initiatives? Steve, why don't we come to you first?
Sure. I mean, less of a priority and more of just, you know, doing the due diligence. Everything we touched on here, we talked about how quickly things are changing, how new products are being introduced. And so as you're taking those approaches and you're bringing something new into your business, whether it's for a gap that you have or to improve a process, it's important to do the due diligence on them, as Maren mentioned, right? Run them through the paces from a security perspective. Are they checking the boxes that you need for your compliance possibly, or just you need to be able to sleep better at night? And then also look internally. Right? A lot of times there are tools that maybe already have the same functionality or something similar. So you don't always have to reinvent the wheel and bring new technologies in. But when you do actually make the decision to bring a new technology in, making sure that you're checking the boxes, doing the due diligence, how does it interact with the other applications that you have? Are you bringing new security implications into those? And as you know, as always, as a trusted partner here, we want to hear this from our customers ahead of time rather than when they've already implemented it and something, you know, is possibly already an issue. So we love to take part in those conversations, look at contracts, look at agreements, and try to, you know, go through that process with you.
Great, that's helpful. Bob, how about you?
I'm big on investing in digital transformation. You know, prepare for that. It's not an option anymore. You have to adopt technologies that are going to enhance your customer experiences. They're going to help operations. They're going to drive growth. The cloud adoption, we talked about the hybrid environment first. That's where, if you're not looking at cloud adoption, you're not going to be able to leverage AI. You're not going to be able to increase your automation and all those, and get good data analytics to understand where your business is at financially with your clients and how to improve those things. I think that's going to be the biggest thing going forward that we have to do.
Maureen, key takeaway?
Yes, as Steve and Bob mentioned, embrace the new technology, but don't do it alone, because, you know, you have a business to run, and cybersecurity requires a different set of skills and is changing so fast. I don't think one engineer or even a small team engineer can keep up with it. The changes, it's crazy. So you need sophisticated tools, and you need to have them configured correctly, and you need to be able to adapt to new attacks. We're here to help.
I think hearing proactive, agile, you know, I think just keeping pace with all of the changes, right? This is never a set it and forget it job, role, industry, right? When it comes to technology and the way that we leverage it as businesses today, just continued refinement and evaluation sounds like the right approach. All right, good. I want to give folks on the phone an opportunity to submit questions. If you have not done so yet, there is a Q&A box within your GoToWebinar dashboard. You can go ahead and type in any questions that you might have for our panel today, and we'll do our best to address them as well as we can. I've got one here from Samuel. Speaking of vulnerability management, how important is it to keep PC manufacturer drivers, BIOS, software, and third-party apps up to date? I would assume the answer is very important, but maybe Steve, you can kind of address keeping that stuff up to date.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, that's kind of where I was getting with the frequency of those scans, because if you're doing them yearly, it's kind of like a hurry up and wait. You get the scans, it's like, okay, let's fix all this right now. Let's patch everything. Let's make sure everything is solid. And then within 3 to 4 months, the whole frameworks, everything's changed. There's been a new vulnerability on, multiple systems, whether it's a Google Chrome browser or it's a firewall, or if it's the out-of-box management on your host servers. So getting close to real-time visibility on those and patching them as rapidly as possible is paramount. It's very important.
Yeah, and I know the third-party application patching is huge too, right? It's not something that every MSP out there does. We saw it particularly last year with that big Adobe vulnerability. Sometimes those software products they're extremely vulnerable out in the wild. So I think, kind of reinforcing the third-party application patching is really important too.
Absolutely.
All right, let's see. Got a quiet audience today, guys. You obviously just touched on everything that they wanted to cover. Do you guys have questions for each other, my esteemed panel?
Putting us on the.
I'm putting you on the spot. Absolutely.
Are
you real, Steve? Is this really you, or just impersonation?
It's
a deep fake.
Very much real. Very much.
What's
real.
that new? Is it Sora, the new video tool that's floating around where you can just tell it, create a video of someone having a family dinner or something, and that terrifies me.
It does. It's very hard now to tell what's real and what's not. And I think people, just for everybody, is to slow down when you do your emails or Zoom or anything. You have to slow down and think, almost be like, is it real? Is it doubting all the time? I think I have a high threshold of that, but doubting, is this for real? Is it, you never know. It's very difficult to do.
Mentality, right?
Zero trust. Yeah, exactly. That's my new name. Zero trust.
Well, that goes to this next question that Lisa just put in here. I read a story this morning about a Chinese company where the fake CEO asked the CFO to make urgent payments to the tune of $25 million. The crazy thing is that this was done via a Zoom call. How can we avoid this from happening? They faked the Zoom participants' faces and voices. So that's the kind of stuff now where really, really impressive technology capabilities, but really scary repercussions.
Yeah, and the voice also were deep fake voice. Unfortunately, it's like zero trust. So I think if I remember the story, the person hesitated a little bit, but because everybody was in the Zoom meeting and he had more than just the CEO, he recognized some friends up there that he went ahead. But unfortunately, we need to put policies in place and saying, if there is a transfer of so much, you need 2 people's involvement, you need to check by phone, you need to have several layers of protection right there. That's policies needs to be in place. So each time now we have, employees handbook needs to be updated, and and test your staff. I would do a social engineering, you know, send somebody to do social engineering to your business and see how everybody is faring.
In fact, I can't echo the policy statement enough. You know, everything we do with technology starts with an actual policy, and it doesn't have to be use this tool or use this software. It's as simple as if there's a request for a transfer over a certain amount of money, stop. You have to get verification from 2 people. If you get a call from somebody and you're not sure, tell them you want to call them back and call a number that you know they're supposed to be at and confirm it. All those little things, that hasn't changed. Now, yeah, the ability to create a video or have somebody live on a Zoom call has changed, but those policies we've seen, I guarantee Maureen, Steve, everybody here, we all have those horror stories because we have clients that have fallen for those things in the past and have sent $500,000 or more out the window, especially with what we like to call the CEO exception. Well, it was the CEO and he was in a hurry, he was traveling. So we just skipped all that. You have to just take a minute, breathe, and follow the right policies.
Yeah, and Maren touched on how important it is to train the staff, right, and to arm them and to educate them. The likelihood of you falling for something the first time you see it is a lot higher than if it's the 5th or 6th time you see it, even if those are simulated and ultimately fake attacks or fake versions that are, you know, for education purposes. But just getting that into someone's memory that this is out there, this can possibly happen, and seeing how they react to it. You'd rather them make that one time on the fake, you know, the attempt that you're doing internally and that you have that you're controlling, rather than it be the live environment where it could cost the business.
Yep. Yeah, I feel like the, you know, if it feels too good to be true, it probably is. It's a good methodology to follow. All right. Well, it looks like this is a good place to wrap things up. I'm sure we've only scratched the surface in terms of 2024 technology trends. So I certainly encourage folks who've joined us today to reach out with additional thoughts and questions that we can help address over time. As a reminder, everyone who joined today will receive a copy of the slide deck as well as the full recording. So if you want to revisit this content in the future, you can absolutely do so. Keep an eye out in your inboxes for all that information tomorrow afternoon. I want to go ahead and thank my panel of colleagues, Bob, Steve, Maureen. Thank you all for sharing your insight and perspectives today. And as always, thank you to our attendees for joining. We hope we will see everyone again real soon.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.